Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Stash Report from the Stash Project. Today is January 12th, 2018. Almost said 17. Well, it's been an interesting week, has it not? I think the majority of you have seen our video that we did about Hobbico's filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Got a lot of new subscribers out of that video. So, should be interesting to see how many of y'all stick around through the regular episodes of our show that we do here. So, let's talk about that up front. It's our big elephant in the room this week. We've gotten statements from pretty much all of the relevant parties involved. Revell of Germany has said that they are owned by Hobbico, but they operate independently of them, and the only difference that they may face in the future would be having a new ownership group. Again, let's hope that new ownership group is the ownership group that owned it back before 2012 when they made, decent model kits. Nothing wrong with the actual stuff that's going on right now. It's just not really, where it was at. They've gone for a more simplified thing that, at least in my personal opinion, I mean, yours may vary. I don't know how many people are, really chomping at the bit to get the new import cars in the first place that they were making, is the, the lack of fidelity, if you want to call it that exists between the kits that were made prior to the ownership change and the kits that were made afterwards. This, kind of sort of mirrors, a lot of people will talk about Revell US, the stuff made in the mid to late 1990s, has a little bit more fidelity and, parts count and, things like that than the newer stuff that is more simplified. I understand you're sort of trying to split your market into twain. The older guys need simpler kits because they just can't build stuff like they used to because of whatever reason. If you doubt that whatsoever, then just look at any good modeling forum, and there are none, but just look at any of them, and you'll see a bunch of guys complaining that they wish kits had metal axles again because their kits are too complicated. And then, of course, you're trying to bring in a new modeler who's never built before, a youth modeler who's just entering, and you need to have some scale. Unfortunately, when you try to make that scale, you kind of top off the top end of everybody who, I don't know, is not necessarily looking for a challenge in their building, but is expecting sort of that state-of-the-art design, feel, content that other companies can provide. So, that's that. Revell has said that nothing will change with what they're doing, other than possibly, of course, having a new owner. Hobbico itself put out a statement through all the vendors, either through Great Plains or Tower Hobbies, depending on where the people got their vendors from. There was a it was page-long letter that every paragraph had double speak. Oh, nothing's going to change. Everything's great, but we might sell off parts of the company and be completely different when we come out of bankruptcy protection. Well, it's one or the other, I guess from our standpoint, and I've seen a little bit of not panic, but a little bit of concern, with this, is that Hobbico has gone bankrupt. The umbrella company that owns everything that they own, which is pretty much, they tried to be the ring from Lord of the Rings, one company to rule them all, one company to produce everything. They had RC, they had trains, they had puzzles, they had the model kits, obviously, and all this other stuff. And it's one of these things that, great example of that would be Benny and Smith. Crayola found out when they owned Revell, it's really hard to shove a plastic model kit company sideways into a company that only makes art supplies. Now, you would think Hobbico and Revell would be a better mesh, being a distributor for hobby-related stuff, but that's the thing, it's a hobby-related stuff. You go to Tower Hobbies, they sell a lot more than just plastic model kits. They sell everything there, and so does Great Plains. Now, it's not Revell's fault. That should be key. I've seen a lot of people, there's some comments in my video itself, comments around the internet, in forums and whatnot, that have all basically said, well, the hobby is dead because Revell can't make any money, and that's why Hobbico went bankrupt. Revell is a wheel in a cog as far as Hobbico goes, and they were one of the wheels that was constantly making money. Their RC division, not doing real well last year. Profitable over the long course, probably, but last year really suffered a lot due to the fact that we didn't mention this in the video because it had slipped my mind because I'm not an RC guy in the first place. There's an entire secondary problem to Hobbico, and that is that Traxxas is suing them for violating their patents and intellectual properties in regards to stealing Traxxas' designs and putting them into Hobbico-owned companies' RC cars. So not only do you have that whole employee stock ownership program thing looming out there with government intervention coming at some point, you also have this federal lawsuit about patents and intellectual property that is also obviously crippling their RC division. A lot of their flying RC stuff, well, drones have taken over a lot of that stuff, and people want drones, and Hobbico, which, is sort of a symptom of Revel's sort of morass, and this becomes a thing where, again, the two are not tied together in this aspect, but you see both of these companies playing things extremely conservatively, and Revel has done that prior to being owned by Hobbico. And I understand why, but at the same time, if you're not willing to take some risks here and there, this thing happens to you, everybody wants to fly in drones. And all of a sudden, nobody really wanted to fly helicopters. They wanted drones. They wanted things with cameras on them. They wanted, things you could fly with your cell phone and all these other innovations that other RC companies, of course, have done. And Hobbico's, I keep saying Revel's, and Hobbico's, own companies were very slow to adopt. And so they lost all of that market share, and it's very hard to make that back up again. When you're sort of, playing follow the leader. Look at any of the 1970s, 1980s U.S. automotive manufacturers. What did they all play follow the leader with? Small, fuel-efficient cars. Didn't have any. The ones they made were junk. It wasn't really until, Chrysler was saved by the federal government and started making minivans that this whole new class of vehicle, exploded from the Plymouth Voyager, Chrysler Town and Country, and Dodge Caravan, was vans. Vans were big full-size things that contractors used until they made small vans that families owned, and then all of a sudden everybody had a minivan. And then you look at things like the Ford Taurus when it came out in 1986. There wasn't a real mid-sized or large car at the time. You had Ford Tempo, you had a Ford Crown Victoria. There was nothing really in the middle there, and they created a whole new segment of vehicles. But that was because there were things like the Toyota Camry and the Nissan Altima and all these smaller, mid-sized Japanese cars that were outselling everything. When you're the last one to the party, it's very hard to make that market share up if you ever can again. And so that's a big headwind that Hobbico has. Revel, I want to make sure you guys understand this. Revel is profitable. Does it make tens of millions of dollars? No, it doesn't, because it's not that big of a company to make that kind of money. Revel in Europe brands paint and glue and things like that, but here in the United States they don't do that, and so they're just strictly surviving on what they make out of model kits. Fortunately, when it comes to things like the Model A Fords and some other decisions that they made product-wise, they've had large and medium. I don't think there's really been anything that's been mediocre, really. Large and medium successes with their kits. They've managed to choose the right subject matter. You look at the NASCAR kits have sold really well. The Model A's really sold well when they were around, and they probably will when they come back again. There's the licensing for Halo, which doesn't necessarily affect us, but that stuff has sold pretty well. The Star Wars stuff has sold pretty well, even if a lot of serious modelers would look at it and go, well, this is, Bandai. But there's a lot of people that really aren't looking for a Bandai experience as well. I mean, you look at Bandai's latest kit was that gigantic, not Imperial Starship, but the gigantic Millennium Falcon is in like 1/72nd scale, and it cost almost $500. Your Revel purchaser, your Revel customer isn't spending $500 on a model kit. That people who buy Revel kits as a whole, they're having heart attacks at anything over $25. You're not selling them a $500 spaceship. Bandai's customers, who are serious sci-fi builders, $500 is a little expensive, but you know what? They're going to have this gigantic Millennium Falcon when they're done with it. And much like Round 2, spending a lot of money tooling up Star Wars but Star Trek and various other, space sci-fi things. A lot of money being made there, and they're willing to spend their money there instead of in the relatively, relatively tight-margined automotive world where, of course, everyone sits around and does nothing but complain that all they're doing is re-releasing old kits, which is true, but for a portion of people, and this is the thing that, you know, it's kind of hard to make people understand, because people see Revell doing the same thing. When kits are reissued, they're not for you. They're not for the guy with the paint booth and the giant stack of race cars and the 1,000 model kits. It's for the people who shop at online vendors, and to a certain extent eBay, but not really. And of course, Hobby Lobby and Michaels, big box stores, because these kits, even though you have one, and it seems like it just came out the other day, it's probably been 7 to 10 years since the last time the kit was reissued. Yeah, you could find one really cheap on eBay, but they're not marketing to eBay. They're marketing to frontline retailers. And if, to a certain extent, it's a little, presumptuous of people who really don't understand the whole, and I'm not presenting myself as somebody who does, believe me, but for people who really don't understand what goes into retailing this type of thing, that you just go, oh, well, they just reissued that, 9 years ago. Who needs another one? Well, everybody who didn't get one 9 years ago. Yeah, you could go on eBay and buy one for half as much. Yeah, you could go to a show and buy half as much. But again, these people don't go on eBay, and these people don't go to model shows. They are the weekend warrior, what I have dubbed, and we use here with my friends and I, the weekend warrior builder. They're going out and picking up a model kit. They chuck it together over a couple of weekends. When it's done, they go out and they buy another model. If that model isn't on the Hobby Lobby shelf, if it isn't at their local hobby shop, if they're still fortunate enough to have one, not at Michael's, or it's not on Tower Hobbies or Model Roundup, although Model Roundup carries a lot of old stuff, but if it's not available just frontline right there in their face, then they're not going to know it exists. And you can look at that pretty much anybody. Anybody will look at a bunch of model kits and go, what is that? Oh, it's a blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't know that exists, and they've been in the hobby for 50 years. Just because you don't know it exists doesn't mean it wasn't there. So, long story short, Hobbico is going to be, if it still exists as Hobbico. It may get another name if the owner chooses to change the name, but Hobbico, as it exists today, on the 12th of January, is not going to exist the same way after April. A lot of people keep insisting that it's Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and so they're just going to rise like a phoenix from the ashes and be perfectly fine, and that's not the case. They have said in every single press release, their own intercompany press releases to their vendors, and I mean stuff that the general public isn't supposed to see, but I have because I know a guy who knows a guy, have admitted that they are going to, more than likely, almost a certainty, be sold as a whole. There's going to be a whole new ownership at Hobbico, and chances are some of the holdings of Hobbico will no longer belong to the company that is Hobbico when it's all said and done with. That doesn't mean Revell's going away. You shouldn't run out and necessarily buy a bunch of Revell kits because they're going to be gone, because that's not going to happen. That is not the future for 2018 for Revell. The future for Revell in 2018 is, again, who owns Revell at the end of all of this? Does Hobbico keep it because it's a profitable chunk of the business, and whoever owns whatever is left of Hobbico wants to keep it in-house? Does it get sold to Tom Lowe at round 2, some group of blind investors, another company out there? Mobius can't afford it, they can't buy it, but, somebody else that, there's a lot of old names floating around the hobby. I mean, a lot of people will remember the threatened rebirth of Johan through a company that was going to be called Illinois Model Company or something like that. It was going to be the IMC, but not the old IMC, and that got as far as it did. And then the gentleman who was, who provided the backing, basically, who was at Lindbergh and at MPC, and at MPC a long, long time ago, had health issues, and because of the health issues, he couldn't fund the little, thing that they were doing, and that was the end of that. So it really depends on how deep the pockets are of whoever buys Revell or whoever buys Hobbico and keeps Revell. Again, be interested to see what's going to happen, but, the panic of, oh my God, this is the end of Revell. No, it won't be. Irregardless as to what happens, somebody will buy Revell. It's one of those companies that's worth more as a name than it is as the sum of its parts kind of thing. You wouldn't want to buy, Revell's not going to get divvied up, right? Revell's not going to sell all their truck models to Round 2 and sell all their car models to Mobius and keep their planes and boats or something like that. Revell is what Revell is because of the name. It is an established, very, very long-term, from the 1950s, 1960s established company. You buy that company for its name, for its tooling catalog. because you can make all of these model kits, reissues, and whatnot. Whoever buys them needs to be careful that they don't just, reissue everything at once and try to be, oh, look at all these models we're making, and reissue stuff that's just been done recently. I know a lot of people don't like how many kits that Revell reissues in a quarter compared to how many new toolkits there are, but, that's the financial facts of the situation. You're printing money with the reissues because, again, you're selling them to people who don't have them. I'm missing the Baldwin Motion. No, excuse me. I'm missing the Yanko Camaro out of the 69 Camaros, but I have the rest. I haven't gone and bought the Fast and the Furious one just because it's one of those kits that's one of those, I'd like to get that, but it's not, on my top tier of priorities as far as buying domestic kits go. But, if they reissued anything else, I don't need any of those other kits. But that doesn't mean that the guy who just came back into the hobby from a 30-year sabbatical has any 69 Camaros. You could reissue the Baldwin Motion, the RS, the ZL1, the convertible, month after month after month, and he's just going to be pulling them off the shelves one after another, assuming he likes 69 Camaros, and, they'll sell all those kits. I also saw another thing that was, well, if you don't go to support your local hobby shop, this is why Hobbico is bankrupt. Understand that Hobbico is the parent company. Hobbico made their money on these model kits a long time ago, right? When you buy something from your local hobby shop, it's gone through at least one wholesaler in between, if not more than one. Depending on where your price point of your hobby shop is, you can tell how much they've paid for their model kit. Hobbico made the money selling it to the wholesaler, right? Hobbico sells a bunch of kits to Great Plains, sells a bunch of kits to Tower Hobbies, and then Tower Hobbies sells a bunch of kits to you, and Great Plains sells a bunch of model kits to Hobbytown USA, Hobby Lobby, Michaels, all these other companies down there. Or those companies may have direct relationships, but at any rate, Hobbico made their money distributing the kits out. The money's made. So whether you buy it at your local hobby shop or through Tower Hobbies or Model Roundup or eBay or a local show or your plastic pusher at your local club, it doesn't matter. Hobbico made their money. You're not shorting Revell cash no matter how you buy their model kits, because in order for the model kit to be available for you at retail sale, somebody paid for it before it ever got to you. The only thing you're doing by buying something at retail is creating a demand to order more of that same kit. Example would be you order a case of the 30 Model A when it comes back out, and that's 12 kits, by the way. So 11 people come in and buy them. You got one left. What are you going to do? You have to go buy more. In that case, Hobbico, makes more money because you're stripping it out of the wholesaler, and the wholesaler has to reorder to fill its stock up. So that's the only way buying something is really relevant. Is when you buy something, your hobby shop has to reorder. Who has to reorder from the wholesaler? Who has to reorder from Revell and Hobbico in the first place? Many steps removed, but I saw a lot of people just being like, "Oh, I bought a Revell kit. I'm saving Revell. Oh, I bought another Revell kit. I'm saving Revell." Okay, you're saving Revell in a long about way, but okay, yeah, you are, I guess. Again, Revell's not going anywhere. Don't panic and go buy Revell kits if you don't have to. I mean, if you want Revell kits, go buy them. I'm not going to tell you not to. I mean, Lord knows. We get this. Lord knows. I've got plenty of Revell kits to go around for everybody, but it's not a thing. Like, I don't buy Revell kits, but. And then I'm trying to think. There was one other thing I saw. A couple of loose cannons. I'll call them, because any other name would be disrespectful. We're saying that Revell should start a Kickstarter campaign to allow the hobbyists to fund it, and if you donated beyond a certain amount of money, you would then always get a discount for Revell kits. Are they the Green Bay Packers, or are we going to own them as a hobbyist? How does that work? 1,000 voices screaming into the darkness? Nothing will ever get done that way. I mean, sorry guys, but a lot of you have really bad ideas. And that doesn't necessarily affect you guys on this channel. You guys are all cool. But beyond that, you've all seen the suggestion. If you've gone to NNLEs, you've seen the suggestion list, and some of the things you sit there and go, okay, I'd build that, but what are the other 2, 3, 5 variations of that tooling? There isn't one. It's not going to get done. Sorry. That's the way the game is played now. I know a lot of people don't like that fact, but that's the way the game is played now. It's one other thing, and this isn't related to the Hobbico bankruptcy, that I've seen addressed a couple of different times on a couple of different forums and on Facebook recently, is there's like this letter writing campaign that has been started basically to tell Round 2 what they should be doing with their tooling. And again, anytime a group of hobbyists on a forum gets together and decides to tell somebody what to do, always a laugh a minute, a riot. And basically, this was all of the things that, you know, Round 2 is sitting on all of this tooling. Why don't they make a blah, blah, blah out of a blah, blah, blah? Understand that everything that Round 2 owns in their tooling catalog was made a long time ago, right? Other than the showroom replica stuff, the only really new tool kits that they've done are the new Camaro. They did a new, you know, the new Corvette and the new Camaro Challengers that were done showroom replicas, but those were unassembled promotional models. Really, literally. If you couldn't tell that, I don't know what to tell you, but the first, honest to God, new tooling that they did, model-wise, are these new Camaros. They put all their new tooling money into sci-fi. We've already covered that. So nothing that even the most recent stuff, even the stuff from the 1990s, AMT Ertl, late 90s, none of this stuff exists in a CAD CAM design, right? None of it is 3D. None of it can be emailed to China and have tooling changes made. It just doesn't exist in that format. All of the stuff was still being done by hand. Remember, where were Revell kits being made? I mean, towards the end they were getting made in Mexico before Racing Champions bought them up, but before that everything was made in Iowa. The reason why Revell and, to a certain extent, and AMT Ertl could keep costs down, other than the fact that Walmart was squashing them on what they were willing to pay for model kits, was because everything was done in the United States. And not in the sense of like, oh, cheap labor and blah, 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 but it's a lot easier to control issues when everything is one place, right? That is, you've seen that, if nothing else, that having the tooling in China has caused issues with the tooling because you're trying to translate from one language to another between one day and another. Because remember, right now, as I'm filming this video, it's 8:14 at night. That means it's 9:14 in the morning in China. So it's already, you know, Saturday morning over there. You've got time lag, you've got communications lags, you've got all these different things, and, you know, it sometimes wires get crossed. It is, you know, Revell has, unfortunately, in several instances, and I understand why, it's a whole cost issue, but has, you know, not fixed things that are broken. The back end of the Nova, for example, it would be a good example of that. One of the very few things they actually put a stop on and fixed the tooling for was the 57 Chevy convertible. You guys may remember way back when that came out, there was no X-brace for the chassis, and they stopped the production of that to get the X-brace out of the 55 Bel Air and put it into the 57 Chevy so that that part would exist. Otherwise, you know, most people would have lambasted the kit when it got here, because that is a major component of that, of the convertible Tri-5s, is the fact that the giant, you know, steel X-brace bolted onto the bottom of the car to you know, give torsional rigidity to the chassis. I don't know, but again, none of that stuff from Round 2 exists in a digital format. It cannot be manipulated. In order to change the 49, is one I see all the time, 49 Mercury to 51 Mercury. Cool idea, I buy 51 Mercury. But in order to change that 49 Mercury that was made in the 1960s into another car, you'd have to make a whole new tooling for it at this point. How do you change that? You'd be making a whole bunch of new parts to fit into a really old model kit that has metal axles in the chassis. Well, now you have a bunch. People aren't going to stand for that, really, I don't think. I mean, maybe they would. I mean, there's a lot of curbside Japanese kits with metal axles still, but I don't think the majority of people getting a new tool kit are going to stand for having a wire axle necessarily. So you've got that issue to look at. Do we tool up a new chassis? You know, if you're tooling up a new rear suspension, do you tool up a whole new chassis? Because now you got to make a new suspension that fits the old chassis, and the old exhaust that has to fit the new suspension, and the old motor, and the old, you know, well, all of a sudden all this old stuff has to be done new, and you might as well just make a whole new kit at that point, because you're not spending $250,000 to fix a 49 Mercury into a 51 Mercury, but you are making a whole new body shell for sure, because if you did anything to the 49 tooling, you'd irrevocably change it. It's not designed in a way that it allows it to change over. You'd have to make a whole new body tool that has to fit on a 60-year-old model kit. Remember when AMT Ertl made the new 70 Super B that was the old MPC body on the new AMT chassis, and you had to cut part of the windshield off to make it fit right? Do you want to go through that? Do you really? Because that is your life of, well, let's make these old AMT kits into new ones. None of that stuff exists digitally. You know what else doesn't exist digitally, and we've seen this, are the original CAD cams for the 32 Ford. That's why the Rat Roaster had to be completely and totally redone as a new tool. There's not that much different, and they obviously copied almost everything off of the other ones, or else they would have made a new kit that was actually accurate to the car, but the tooling was modified all the ways it was modified. Ed Sexton said something to the effect of they couldn't modify it again without breaking it, but that is just doublespeak for, look, we tooled a 3-window, a 5-window, and all these other things into it with all these different engine options back in 1993. And we have slowly but surely gone through all of these kits, so we have new kits every so often. But the tooling didn't, the designs don't exist for that kit to make it into a completely different thing that didn't exist prior to deciding to do Stacey David's car, so they had to make a new tool. The 68 Camaro, right? Oh, that should have just been done off the 69's tooling. A lot of differences between the two, but a lot of that stuff could have carried over. But wait, the 69 Camaro was made back in 1994 or 1993. The digital formats for those don't exist. They made the Camaro, the Baldwin Motion, and the Yenko kits way back when. Go dig up your Revell kits. Those kits were all made back in the mid to late 1990s. The only new tool, 69 Camaro we got, the ZL1. Do you know what's new about the ZL1? It has the poverty hubcaps and the steel wheels out of the 69 Nova. That's it. Everything else is a carryover of parts between the RS, the Baldwin, and the Yenko kit, as far as the headlight options and things like that go. That's it. Just the wheels and tires out of the 69 Nova. You notice the 69 Nova has 3 versions of that. If there's ever a 72 Nova or a 70 Nova or anything else, that tooling was all done back in 2007, and they've just slowly been releasing it so that they always have these kits. They're not a Revell is not Aoshima or Fujimi or anything like that, where every 2-3 months, Hasegawa, every 2-3 months we're issuing the next version. They're very very slow on doing their things. And again, it makes sense. You make a big long gap. You sort of let the market tire itself out of whatever you're doing currently, and then boom, you drop off the next of this older kit, and everybody's like, oh, a 69 ZL1. This is what I've always wanted. Another good example of that, of course, would be the trouble that Mobius got into releasing all these 4 pickup trucks one after another. The reason why there's a big long gap between now and the 4x4 is because there are so many of those Mobius pickup trucks that are sitting around unsold, because they sold essentially the same pickup truck 3 times in 7 months. The short bed, one right after another. And, how many short beds do you need? I mean, even if the 72 72 came with a different engine, how many people even knew that? That is the thing to think about. It is very hard to take an old model kit and turn it into something new, because it was never designed to be that way, and the tooling doesn't exist to do that. I don't know what else I could say about that, but it seems like every 2 weeks this gets brought up. Why don't Revell take the old 1970-something or other and change it into something else? Because they can't. I mean, they could, but it would either destroy whatever the old thing is, or it would cost so much that they would have to make a new one, and nobody would butt on the new one of just whatever that is. It only makes fiscal sense to change something that already exists into that, not make a whole new one of that, if you get what I'm saying. So, anyway, guys, we'll leave that there, because we've just prattled on for like 20 minutes without actually going into anything that even resembles what's going on this week as far as the as far as the model kit stuff goes. So, what has gone on? We got a couple of things from BMAX here. Before we go into the new stuff, this is a little tease here. We got an official. We've talked about it before. There's an official release date for the new Toyota JTCC car. It's supposed to be in the middle of February, which probably mean March, beginning of March, middle of March for everywhere else if you don't buy it directly from China, assuming it comes out on time to begin with. And then this week we got a tentative Hong Kong release date for the new M3 kit, which is going to be a rally version. It is going to have the Bastos modal livery and be for 1988. A couple of interesting things about this kit, even if you don't want to make a rally car, is it pretty much makes obsolete several of the the trans kits that are available for, because this 1988 will give you the smaller rear wing, the new front bumper, the little smaller mirrors. I know that looked awful, but the smaller mirrors and the side exhaust. There are several of the 1980s cars that require side exhaust, and this will have a side exhaust in it as well. Obviously, also on this little image they're showing you here, you get the new rally wheels, as well as uprights for the front and rear suspension that are going to raise the car moderately. It's not a big jacked up 4x4 off-road rally car. These were only raced on tarmac rallies, so you're getting a little bit around maybe an inch or two of ground clearance. It's going to be a couple millimeters in scale up, and also the wheels won't be tucked under anymore. They should sit more or less straight up and down. There's no new tow hooks on here as well. Like I said, front bumper, spoiler, the front lip, new brakes. I believe those probably be front brakes, and then you have the side exhaust on there as well. So just 3 new sprues to cover that. And then the thing that they dropped on Instagram today, or well, actually I think it was yesterday, was the test shots for the new Group B Audi rally car. I know a lot of people have really been upset, faux upset, because really how upset could you really be, about the fact that, you know, the JTCC car came out, the M3 came out, the 240 Nissan rally car came out. All these things were announced after this was announced, but, you know, BMAX asked you to be patient so they can make the best model kit out of this as they could, and we're finally, like I said, seeing test shots of it. This is going to be a curbside. I know a lot of people complain about that, but please save it for somebody who cares. You know, it turns into one of these things, do you want stuff or not? What's very interesting about this is that the fender edges of the front fenders appear to be clear pieces. You'll have to primer them. You won't be able to just paint them with a lacquer paint, obviously. But I was like, the windshield wiper's a little askew there. Must have had a little bit of a rollover on the way to the Photoshop. But here's a sort of a picture more of what goes on there as far as the chassis detailing, which looks really good. You know, in a test shot, you're gonna have a basic, you know, assembled interior the way you would with everything's door panels and things that you would normally associate with this. It'll have nightlight options and stuff like that. And obviously at some point in time there will be a detail upset announced for it as well. The M3 rally car will get its own detail upset for the rally specification, as is with BMAX's you know, pattern, or practice rather, of including detail upsets that are specific to each kit. So for anybody who's wondering where that Audi car is, it's a little closer than now. If I had to guess and had a gun held to my head, I would probably say summer, based on those test shots. And it'll be interesting what they show, either if they show anything at the Nuremberg Toy Fair in February, if they go with Aoshima over, or when the Shizuoka Hobby Show comes along in May. We've had a couple of kit releases here in the United States this week. These are reissues from Round 2, like everything that Round 2 does. First up is the 69 Plymouth GTX, the Dirty Donnie kit. This is a straight reissue of the 69 GTX. We've all seen this kit, have this kit, have had this kit. It is the factory stock version, not the pro stock, obviously. Not a lot going on here with this in terms of it being anything added to it other than all the Dirty Donnie things. I've seen, again, people describing it as being $5 rub-on tattoos. Your opinion of Dirty Donnie may vary. The kit is molded in black. I believe that is because if you look at the side panels on this, and I don't have side panels, but if you look at the side panels of this, he is standing next to a 69 GTX with a customized license plate. I believe that may be his own car, and so the reason maybe it's molded in black is because you're building his car, and specifically. But it's you know, mid 90s AMT Ertl tooling, so it's modern as far as that goes. You know, there's accuracy issues with it, but what are you gonna do, right? The other reissue this week is the 1950 Chevrolet pickup truck and the Union 76 livery package here. Silent box top, but the side panels, of course, have all the things you need to know about it. Only new pieces to this kit are signboards for the pickup bed that sort of sit up above the pickup's frame rail, as it were, that advertise some new businesses that are included in this. There's a Union 76 shop. There's like a rust proofing thing. Then there's something else, might be a plumber. A couple of those things have decals for the signboards. Everything else, like the beacon for the roof and the front push bumper and things like that, were tooled up back about, 7 or 8 years ago when they did the Texaco version of the kit. And it has pad printed wide whites, which, again, I forgot to take mine down and look to see if it had, but if not, those may also be new. But that is all that we have going on so far in the country of the U.S. as far as kit releases go. Have 2 more or 3 more U.S. kits coming out. I have something checked off here, but I do not see the image for it, which means I may have not downloaded it, or it may not exist. At any rate, we'll cover it next week. And then we go overseas. A couple things out of Japan already. Out of Aoshima, these are real quick here. These are the S15 Sylvias, Spec Rs. They're done in the pre-paints. These are available in Brilliant Blue and Sparkling Silver. As we've talked about with the Aoshima kits in the past, the entire kit from top to bottom was pre-painted. But, of course, no molding lines or anything else like that have been taken off. Everything's still on the parts runner, so you will have cleanup to do on that sort of thing. Or you can just throw it together as a weekend build and go with it. There's, either way you want to go with it and make it as nice as you want to or as fast as you want to. One Fujimi kit that's been reissued already this week, and that is the BMW M635 CSI. As we talked about in the compilation video, this is the Enthusiast Series kit, so this is all 200 plus pieces of that gloriousness. It has been a while since M6 has been available, either from Fujimi or Tamiya's kit, so a welcome addition to anybody who wants to build an M6. And then we have a couple of kits out of Hasegawa for this month already, and one of them is the reissue of the Mazda 767B in the Finish Line livery. This represents the Japanese prototype sports car series livery that was raced the same years that the 787 was raced, the 767 was raced in, European sports car, and then also the same livery, the Finish Line livery, kept going onto the 787B. This, of course, the previous one, and this is really only 767 that's good, because the Tamiya kit's a motorized kit, much like the 962C Porsche is. So this is a curbside. It might be a little bit better of an option. Other than, of course, the Tamiya kit hasn't been around for a while either. Then the other kit is sort of the one interesting reissue, and that is the 1/24th scale Zaxpeed ZK891 F1 car. We've talked about it before. This car was abysmal failure. Only qualified for one race because it had to pre-qualify because of how bad the car was the previous year. So it's a really pretty awful kit. Well, not awful kit, excuse me, awful car. The kit itself's kind of interesting. It's got a full detail engine in it and things like that. So this is on par with a regular F1 car as far as the parts. It's a little simpler because obviously the parts are smaller and more fragile and things like that. So you have situations where the whole front subframe is one piece rather than it being a number of little tubes like it would be on a 1/20th scale F1 car. Tobacco livery. The decals are actually in there for East and West, so there is that. Hasegawa is not afraid to put the liveries in there, so good on them for that. And again, it's an interesting conversation piece, if nothing else, because it is a 1/24 scale F1 car. Again, famous in Japan because of Agori Suzuka being a driver for it. I think that, guys, pretty much wraps up the kits. Let me take a quick peek here. Yep, looks good. The one other piece of information we have for this week is on the decal front. We haven't gotten any of the liveries so far this month, but the carbon fiber decal set for the month of January will be for the Hobby Nunu BMW M6 GT3. A lot of people will be like, what in the world do we need that for? There's one for the detail upset. Well, again, we've talked about it, I think, at least once when I got the kit. Reviews have been done of it, and we mentioned it. I know in our little, small little box review, we didn't do a whole video on it, is the fact that all of the carbon fiber is silver, and it's all the exact same twill pattern. It's just like they cut 3 sheets of decals into patterns, but they're all printed exactly the same. The silver twill is passable for the chassis, like the bottom of the car, because most of the bottom of the car is done with the detail set. But the stuff that goes on the outside of the car, like the front lip spoiler, the front lip, you know, piece that goes around the front splitter lip piece goes around, the door surrounds, the rear trunk spoiler, things like that, shouldn't be silver, and they certainly shouldn't be that twill pattern. So the Studio 27 decal set will fix all of that, and probably more importantly, is it includes all of the interior pieces, like the seats and the dashboard and the door panels, and all of that sort of stuff that the Hobby New kit does not include whatsoever in any way, shape, or form as far as their carbon fiber. Their carbon fiber mostly covers the chassis and a few bits and pieces of the outside. This is going to cover all of the outside and the majority of the interior. So whether or not you want to get this to pick up with a detail upset is up to you. We've talked about before with the window nets, the front downforce canards, as well as the tow hooks not being in the kit at all plastic-wise. You almost have to buy the detail upset so that you have those pieces to put on there. You know, it all depends on what you're trying to do with the build. Do you just want to build it out of the box and you don't really care? Or if you're trying to make it a little more complete, if you will, then you're probably going to want to pick up the decal sets. They are, I think, about $7 or $8 cheaper than the ones for the AMG GT3 were. So that, guys, pretty much covers it for this week. So we hope you enjoy the show. Again, pardon the speech at the beginning. We have a few things to go over there. And I think that's about it. So we'll see you guys on the other side.